Hello everyone, this is the Plankton.
And this is the Amoeba.
And we're here today to do a top 3 list. Not a review, but this past Friday it was Paul Walker's birthday. He would have turned 41. So in honor of his birthday, we decided to do a top 3 list of Paul Walker movies and, well, just our favorite roles that he's been in. So let's get started. So, Amoeba, what is your... Well, let's start with number 3. So what's your number 3 Paul Walker film?
Okay, so for me, it was Pleasantville, and I know he didn't play a substantial role in it, so that's why it is my number 3, but it is an overall great film, and I think he played the role he did really well and very convincing, and it was kind of an interesting introduction because he was so young when he did it, that it was kind of a nice introduction to his acting abilities and to see him on screen and see how he's able to work with the camera. And so, if you haven't seen this movie, it is about these two siblings played by Reese Witherspoon and Tobey Maguire, I think. They're sucked into this TV universe, which is kind of dates back to the 50s, the black and white sitcom era with like I Love Lucy and like Leave It to Beaver. And they're kind of brought into this utopia, dystopia, and they kind of show this town what it's like to live in color. And so it's a really kind of like political and thought-provoking movie, and I think it's something everyone should see and kind of just get a taste of it. I know even as a young kid when I originally saw it, I really enjoyed it and I really was mesmerized by it. And though he does have a small part, he plays Sid, I believe, who was Reese Witherspoon's love interest when they're sucked into this fantasy land. He does play the role very well, and he really adds to the vibrancy of the town and this new world they've created. So that was Pleasantville, if you get a chance to watch that. What about you, Plankton?
Well, my number 3 film is a little movie that he did back, I believe, in 1999. I think it was 99. It was either 99 or 2000. It's called Varsity Blues. And maybe it's just because, we both grew up with the huge sort of Texas the high school football way of life. I feel that film is a very interesting role that he played. Not only was he doing also a southern accent, which was very interesting, you get to see him play a role that normally in a movie like this would have been almost like the douchey guy that's like almost the villain to the main character, because the main character was the backup quarterback who wasn't getting any playing time because he wasn't the star of the football team. So I think like normally in a movie like this he would have been the antagonist or sort of the bad guy who was kind of a douche, but like there's just this huge likability about him when he's playing this role. Like, you can't hate him. Like, you just literally can't. He's just this really, really sweet, kind of not the most smartest guy in the room, but he's just so sweet, and he's got this charming, beautiful smile, and he's got this great presence. So it was really, really hard for you to dislike this guy. So like you literally, like when his character gets injured, he plays the star quarterback who gets injured, you felt really, really bad for him. You just like you throughout this whole entire movie, you just feel like, oh man, that guy got the rough end of the deal the whole entire way through. Like there was just nowhere where you could actually hate this person. You're just like, you actually love him, and in some ways you almost hate the main character more than you hate him. So I thought that was very interesting, and And I just think that was a very great role for him to play. And it was also when he was very young, and he was, I think he had been acting for quite a while at that point, but he was, still that coming out of that teenager to young adult years. So it was very interesting to see him in that role, and playing a quarterback, and he was very good. So, what was your second favorite role?
So, my second favorite role, I think it goes without saying that you have to at least add one Fast and Furious movie to this list. Otherwise, you're really not giving Paul Walker credit. And so I definitely chose Fast 5 as my favorite out of all the Fast movies, but also as one of my favorite roles that he did, and that was one of my favorite movies that he's done. I think that they had a great storyline, and it was great acting, and it was really just non-stop action all the time. I never felt bored. Some of the Fast movies, it kind of lulls a little bit. There's kind of too much talking. But this one was just every minute from the very beginning to the end. There was heart-wrenching action. And even if it was cheesy and unbelievable, it was still really well done. And I really enjoyed it. And I really liked the fact that you kind of brought in this huge team from all these other movies. And they started playing off each other, and it was fun to see them all together. And so I felt like if you were going to pick a Fast and Furious, which you obviously should, being Paul Walker tribute, that Fast 5 was definitely the one to see. It was definitely the most enjoyable. And it kind of had this Ocean's 11 vibe to it, which I totally loved because I think the script was really intelligent. And so I think he did it beautifully, and I think there was a lot of scenes where he got to really show his acting ability in different ranges of what he had to do. And it was really fun to just see him, get rough and tumble and really get into those action scenes. And I really like that. And I like to see him go all out in that film.
I'm wearing a Fast and Furious hat, so...
I'm sure we can all see that.
Appropriate for this occasion.
Makes sense.
Well, my second, it's actually two movies because I couldn't quite decide. Both of them were actually just really, really well done films. Definitely one of the two. The first of the two is a little small movie that he did called Hours. This movie was released after he passed away. I believe it came out 2 weeks after he passed away. And this movie actually, if he had lived, it probably would have been a launching platform for a lot of different bigger roles that he would have gotten into that would have been not just him as, in the Fast and Furious or being an action star. It would have been bringing him into a different league of being a dramatic actor, because it really, it's a story about a man who has to stay in the hospital and try to keep his newborn daughter alive during Hurricane Katrina. And it was just, the whole entire movie is just him. He carries the whole movie. He's literally almost interacting with nobody in this movie. And he is able to hold the screen. You really get to see his range. You get to see his presence and just his emotional abilities, and the way he has to interact with this little baby. He literally, for a large portion of the film, had no one to interact with, yet he was able to keep you really glued to the screen. So I think, out of all the movies that he's done, this was probably the one that really, really showed off his acting chops, and it probably would have had people see him more as a dramatic actor and not just, oh, he's, Brian O'Connor, Fast and Furious action star. And so I feel like, that film would have opened up a lot of different doors for him, had he still been with us. And the other movie that I thought tied for second place, it's kind of a similar role. It's when he gets into these very intense roles that I feel like he's able to really show his range. And it's a little movie called Running Scared, where he plays kind of this guy that was involved in the mob, and he eventually has to like get away from the mafia and the bad guys, and had to fake his death, try to live a normal life. It was just that whole entire movie had a very, very dark, gritty, almost like a Nolan, Batman movie-esque kind of a feel to it, because it was just it was very violent, very graphic, and it just sort of like it pulled no punches. It was going full tilt, everything that you could possibly think of being this huge, not just action, but this very emotional and very dark film. And he was able to really touch into this very much a darker side of what we normally have seen him in these movies. Because, normally when you see Paul Walker in films, he plays the guys that are usually very happy-go-lucky, he's got a beautiful smile. But this one, he was going into some very deep and dark places that I just thought was very interesting, because it was almost unlike any other role that he had done before. So yeah, both Hours and Running Scared, if you have to see a Paul Walker film, I'd suggest those two, because you really see that, he's not just a pretty face, he can actually act. He is very, very good. So, what was your number one?
So my number one was actually Hours. I was really blown away by this movie, and I definitely, as you said, it was literally just him acting. It was no one else, which is so hard to do, first of all. And then the fact that every scene was just some degree of different emotions. He went from complete sadness to devastation to determination to being scared, and all these crazy, like everything just piled in these what was supposed to be 48 hours. And so I thought he did a phenomenal job, especially having to do it all alone. He really showed his range of acting, and I thought this was really just an amazing movie, and it was just non-stop. Your heart was pounding the whole time. It never lulled. It never got boring. You're just kind of like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? It was never repetitive, and the whole time you're sitting there and thinking, what would I do? And then when the movie starts making you think and putting you in this scenario, and you start looking up, like, would I have been able to do that? Would I have been smart enough to think that way? I think is when you really know you've come with a good movie, especially because, as you said, I didn't even know this movie came out, actually. It wasn't until you mentioned it to me. And so I was impressed, and I was really blown away. And I think that if you're going to see a Paul Walker film, it should be this one, to just kind of start off seeing what kind of actor he is, because I do not think there's a movie that shows his wide range of talent like this one. And I think that I was very impressed when I saw it. I was very glad that, even though it was heart-wrenching, I was very glad that I have seen this film.
Yeah, definitely. That one was a very, very intense film to kind of sit through. Especially, I had seen it right after he passed away, so I think for a lot of people it was like, oh, it just kind of gets you when you see him on screen. Well, my number one, I can't really pick one Fast and Furious movie. I'd have to, lump the whole entire franchise together at this point. Obviously, we have not seen number 7, so I'm looking forward, definitely, to see where his story goes with that. But just from, it's my number one for the reason because I feel like the entire franchise is one movie, in a way, because it's almost like it chronicles the growth of not just these characters, but these cast members as actors, because you really see them grow up and kind of come out of their shell and be their own person. And if you watch all the movies together, you really see the story of like how these people have changed, how have they matured, how have they grown up, and to see them actually in the films acknowledging that maturity and acknowledging what they've been through, and just seeing how his character went from that, reckless young man who, kind of really had no place to go and was drifting around, and then seeing him at the end of Fast and Furious 6 being a dad and being sort of this grounded, almost like stepping up to like a patriarch role to this family and taking care of his family and looking after his friends and his people. I just feel like it's one of those kind of remarkable things when you watch this franchise, just to see how much he has grown up in this role and how much they've been able to explore all different sides of him, because that one role is literally it literally is the role of a lifetime. It's the role of his life, basically, because you see this young man when he steps into this game, and when he steps into it's almost like it mirrors his life in so much of that way, where you see him as a young man, and then now he's grown up, and now he's mature, and now he's his own person, and he's finally kind of taking on that responsibility of being, taking care of everybody. I just feel like, watching that whole entire franchise, that is his defining role. It's if there was nothing else that he's ever done, and if you just see one thing, it would be just the Fast and Furious movies, because that role, that Brian O'Connor role, it is so iconic and synonymous to him, basically. It's his life. It's almost like him growing up on screen, and you see how these characters change and how much he learns and how much the characters learn. And I just feel like it never felt like in any of these movies that the character was the same. Like, it never felt like it was stagnant or it was stationary. It always felt like the character was learning a little more each time. The character was growing a little more each time. It just felt like an incredibly organic growth of a character. Like, you really got to see him. I feel like you got to see him do everything in this franchise. You got to see him, playing this young, happy-go-lucky dude. You get to see him being happy. You get to see him being sad. You get to see him being scared. You get to see him go to some dark places. And you get to see him, in rage. And you see him in love and compassion and courage. I just feel like, that one role encompasses everything that is Paul Walker, and everything that is almost like this span of a human lifetime kind of a thing. So I feel like, if there was any one number one role that's Paul Walker film, it's the whole entire franchise of Fast and Furious, because it is essentially one story to me.
So you basically cheated. You basically just stuck in every Paul Walker movie in there and was just like, watch them all.
Well, it wasn't really every Paul Walker movie. I don't know, I just feel like those films define him. It's like, Paul Walker, what's number one thing? It's this character that he's made come to life and sort of embraced and enriched this universe. So I don't know. I feel like I can't take just like one part of that franchise. It's the whole thing that makes it so special.
I agree.
And my hat, so. Well, that is our top 3 list of favorite Paul Walker films. If you have a Paul Walker film that you love, please let us know in the comment section below. And also, a friend of his, Jesse Brizendine, had started a fundraising event. It's called 1 Million for Roe. ROWW. It's Paul Walker's charity, Reach Out Worldwide. What they do is they go to areas affected by natural disasters, and they go out to help them rebuild and help the victims of these natural disasters. So his friend is doing this event to raise money and donations so that they can continue on his legacy of helping people who are in these disaster areas. So, if you're going to do anything for his birthday, if you're a fan of his, I'd encourage you to please make a donation to his charity, Reach Out Worldwide. And you can find, we will add a link to this video that will help you to go to their donation page. So, to all the fans out there who love Paul Walker, this is a tribute to him for his birthday. And peace out.